record. Okay, so I'm going to start recording. Again, juniors, it's important that you attend our session, our FAFSA session beforehand, because your parents are going to use the taxes from this year for next year. Seniors, of course, you're graduating this spring semester, and your financial aid application is very important for you to be able to receive federal aid. So there's different types of federal aid. There's different types of aid. So we have federal aid, which is the FAFSA application, and that is money that you don't have to return. It's like basically free money. And that's based on your family's estimated contribution. Like that's based on your family's income. And so whenever you submit your application, it goes through the financial aid office of where you decide you're going to go. And so once you decide on what institution that you're selecting, they give you a financial aid package based on your financial aid application. So your financial aid determines how much you have to pay out of pocket. And I know it's the first day that the application opens, but the sooner the better, because a lot of institutions, depending on how big or small they are, provide financial aid on a first come basis. And then there's also a lot of students that are going through a hard time. So there is a possibility that financial aid might look a little different because parents have lost jobs, students have lost jobs. So the earlier the better, you have to get in line to make sure that you're getting the most money you can. And then so FAFSA is not the only application that you can get money through. There's also Texas Aid, Texas Grant Aid that you get through the state of Texas, and that is based on your institution. So depending on what your institution thinks you deserve and based on your income and financial aid and federal aid, they will give you more money. And again, there's also like internal and external scholarships. So your internal scholarships are going to be those that are provided by your institution and by your department. So let's say you are a STEM major, you're an engineering major, and they offer freshmen a certain amount of money if you meet the scholarship criteria. So every department is going to have their own internal scholarships. So you don't want to rely on just financial aid through FAFSA because it might not cover your entire tuition. And then something really important to consider is that once you're in college, you have to renew your FAFSA every year until the last year that you're going to graduate, because you still get financial aid through your institution and through the federal government. Again, you don't have to pay these back. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. So here is a list of, it's basically a checklist of what you need to take care of and what tasks you need to accomplish before the end of November. We prefer for you to complete your FAFSA in October, but we understand that some students might have special circumstances or need to gather the paperwork. The goal is to do it by the end of November or mid-November before we go on Thanksgiving break so that you don't have to stress about FAFSA. If you can do it as soon as possible, the better. So our first step is creating a FSA ID. So an FSA ID is basically almost like a social security number. It's like a number that's assigned to you and your parent. So who needs one? It'll be you and your parent. And so if you have a sibling that's already in college and your parent has already created an FSA ID, then they won't need another one, but you will need to get that information from them. Once you have that FSA ID for you and your parent or guardian, you'll need to complete the FAFSA application. It's a pretty extensive application because they want to make sure that you're getting the proper aid that you deserve based on your family's income. So you want to be very meticulous and very careful and not try to rush through it because you just want to check it off your list. Your financial aid is very important, and it'll determine the financial aid package you will receive from your institution. Third, we have the review SAR report. So the SAR report is what you get at the end. Once you submit your financial aid application, it'll take a couple days, maybe 2 or 3 weeks for you to get a reply from financial aid, and it's an SAR report. It tells you your estimated family contribution, and it just gives you like a summary of your entire financial aid application. So after that, then you'll complete the verification process. Some students will be selected for verification and we'll explain what that means. But if you don't, then you just have to sign. You basically sign your financial aid and you're ready to go. Your fifth step, once you've completed the verification process, then you'll receive financial aid packages. Most packages, for those that attended our session yesterday with Texas State University, they did mention that most financial aid packages will be coming out around March, April. So this is why it's important to get in line, because they have hundreds and maybe even thousands of financial aid packages to review for incoming freshmen. So you will get your financial aid letter. It includes how much they're offering you for financial aid, how much they're offering you in Texas grant aid, what the university is offering for you, if there's any like internal or external scholarships that will be applied to for your tuition and board and fees. And then once you receive that, we can start comparing. So we usually do that in the spring semester. Again, it's important to do so. We did to submit it early. We did notice a trend with the passing year class that waited a little too long to submit their FAFSA, and some of them didn't get financial aid packages until August, which was literally right before school started. And then some of them are still waiting on financial aid because they didn't submit it on time. Whatever circumstance that was, it was a challenging time for students. So we're trying to urge you all to submit it early. Once you have compared all your award letters, let's say you have your top three, and you want to compare which one is going to give you the most. At times, it will not cover your entire tuition bill, but they will offer you student loans. And so we are going to cover a little bit about student loans, maybe not in this session, but in our next session with our financial literacy class, where she'll talk about the difference between accepting a subsidized loan versus an unsubsidized loans, because they are very different, and they do have different implications for you in the future as an adult. After you have reviewed your package, then you're going to accept your awards. And so you're officially accepting the award, which means that you'll be officially attending that university in the fall. All right. So what is the FSA ID? And I'm going to close my little window because it's distracting me. Okay. So the FSA ID is a self-selected username and password. You do have to have, I know we've mentioned this before, you have to have an email. Make sure that it's an email that you have a password to. And you have to have an email for your parents as well, and their password, just in case they lose it. And so that's going to be basically your self-identification number for the next 4 years. And even if you go to grad school, after you graduate from college, that'll still be your FSA ID. It's a little hard to reset that. There's a lot of things you have to go through to reset your username and password. So that's going to be your step one. Really quick, how many of y'all can put it in the chat or use your mic. How many of y'all have created a FSA ID already?
I haven't.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, Ms. Hernandez. I'm not quite sure. I would message them in the chat. And so your FSA ID is the step one that you need to take care of. If you guys can do it tonight after a session, I can stay logged on and we can do that together, but that's something that you're gonna have to set for yourself. I can't do it for you. And this is required by all colleges. It'll be available as of today. And again, this is just a very quick overview of what you need. You need to have your student, your social security number, your email address, and your cell phone. Students and parent must create separate FSA IDs. So what is FAFSA? So it's the free application for federal student aid. It is required by all colleges. If you don't complete FAFSA, most likely you will not get any type of aid. They are going to assume that you can pay for college out of pocket, and so they'll pretty much not apply any type of grants, aid, maybe some scholarships, but it's basically free federal money that you don't have to pay back. Again, so this is the website. Oops. So this is the website that we use for applying for federal student aid. It's FAFSA. If you Google it, FAFSA, you can start here. Make sure that before you start your financial aid application process that you create your FSA ID. Again, this is what the screen will look like. Your FSA ID, your FSA password, you log in. Make sure that you do it from a desktop, not a laptop. And that you select the correct year. So starting with student information, demographics will include basic name, birthday, social security number, all that information, state, residency, and eligibility. So starting off, you're gonna select the 2021 FAFSA, not the other one. So you're completing your FAFSA for the next year. Once you select that, it'll take you to basic personal student information. Make sure that you put your legal name complete. If you have a middle name, include it, and your social security number. Student residency and eligibility, if you are a US citizen. No, but I am an eligible non-citizen. No, if you're not, which I don't think any of you all are, but US citizen or no, but I am eligible non-citizen. That means if you have like a permanent residency, any of that. Any questions so far? And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and Maria's gonna monitor the chat. Okay, Maria said, if you are having issues with your email, first try to reset your password. If you are still struggling, you will have to create an account with a different email. I'm assuming you're referring to the FSA ID, right? So this website is fafsa.gov. All right, so we kind of touched a little bit on this. Yes, you are a US citizen. That means you're a US national. If you are not a citizen, but eligible non-citizen, that means you have a foreign visa, you are under TPS, you are a DACA recipient. Actually, for DACA recipients, it'll be different, but none of y'all are DACA recipients. And then I am eligible non-citizen would be students that are under the residency card. And then this one is really important, selective service. So this is for our males. So most students ages 18 to 25 assigned male at birth must register to receive federal student aid. So I'm not sure if you all have heard, our males that are in the session or guys, you do have to sign up for selective service. So basically, if you look at the bottom of our slide on the right bottom, you will see if you are registered. If you haven't registered, then you will select no. Do you want to register with the selective service? You have to click yes. Any questions about this slide? All right, Chastity, if you don't mind, let's work on the FSA ID, or this is for everybody, after the PowerPoint. So we're able to help you, because if you're trying to do it concurrently, I don't want you to miss important information. So this is for everybody. Just in case, I don't want you to miss important information, and we're gonna record the session, but I think if we have everybody focused on lifetime, then we can answer all the questions in lifetime. And then afterwards, if you all need help creating FSA ID, then I can stay with you all. All right, so again, any questions on selective service? Again, you have to click yes. You have to sign up for selective service to receive federal aid. Student education. So this is high school seniors. Even if you are enrolled in the P-Tech program at Seagoville, if you're in early college, if you are taking dual credit courses, you are going to select never attended college first year, because you technically are not considered, you will be considered a freshman the first year of your fall semester. So you're going to select high school diploma. What college degree will you be working on? So you will be first bachelor's degree, and you can see the picture. You guys will be able to see this PowerPoint. And then never attended college. And then are you interested in work study? Always say yes to work study. I know last summer or this summer, we did talk a little bit about work study with some of our juniors and maybe even spring semester. So work study is basically it allows you become eligible to work on campus. And there are some restrictions with work study. So you're only able to work about 20 hours a week. It's really good for students that don't have a car or they have a really packed schedule. They prefer to stay on campus and work on campus. So personally, I was a work study for 3 years during college. It was really good because I didn't have a car. I lived near campus, so I walked to work. They were really flexible with my schedule. So I was able to go to class in the morning and then work in the afternoon, and I was done with by 5. So always say yes to work study because it's easier to not get denied, but like if you don't want to work in the fall, you can say no, I don't want to work. But if you do, it's harder for you to be able to be put on the work study list or submit work study paperwork if you have already said no. So always select yes.
I have a question about the legal residency questions.
Mm-hmm.
The previous one, sorry. It says, what is your state of legal residence?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I would have to put Texas, but then it asks, did you become a legal resident of Texas before January 1st, 2016? And I don't think I did, so.
That was the question about residency that we had, right, Jesse?
Yeah. So I don't know what to put.
So for that one, because you said that it was until after, right?
Yeah, I moved here in 2019.
Okay.
So I don't know what my state of legal residence would be if I'm still not considered a Texas resident and I moved.
So I would select the first question. What is it asking you again?
Have you lived? Oh, it says, have you lived in Texas for at least 5 years? And I put, I mean, I have beforehand, but like not right now, because I lived in Texas for 8 years and then moved. So I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna have to look at the time frames. So we're gonna have to look at the time frames from when you were here and then when you left. I know there's like a special rule. I think it's 7 years. But I think, do you mind waiting after the session so I can look at the question with you?
Sure.
Alrighty, and so moving on to college selection. In Texas, you must list eligible in-state college to be considered for state grant aid. If you are if you are unsure about housing, we recommend that you always select housing plans on campus because you never know what type of aid they could give you. Again, it's also like that work study thing. It's easier for you to say no, say yes, I want it, than say no. So just put on campus for now. Even if you still don't plan on living on campus, a lot of students don't plan on doing that, but it's just so much easier for them to be able to give you more aid if you do live on campus than at home. All right, so dependency. So there is a portion in the FAFSA application that talks about your dependency status, and so we'll get into that. So there are different types of circumstances that put you in the dependency category, and then there's like independent. So if you're dependent, sorry, give me 1 second. Let me go back. Ooh, okay. So there's certain circumstances. If you are homeless, there are certain criteria that you have to meet. If we look at the top of the left corner, we can see that you have to be high school or school district. You have to have some sort of documentation. So checking off the box, your high school or school district liaison has been in contact with you. You have to have some sort of documentation of, you know, a director of a housing or emergency center, or you basically live in a transitional or living program. I don't think any of our students are in that situation, but if you are and you are experiencing homelessness, then let me know and we can fill out that FAFSA portion together. Special circumstances. This is if you are considered if you cannot provide any parental information. This is special circumstances, again, if you have no contact with your parents, you don't know where they are, you can't get social security numbers, you basically don't know where your parent or guardian is. This would be one special circumstance as well. And then there's things as dependency overrides. So different institutions will have dependency overrides, and we'll go into that a little bit. Not that many, it's very rare for students to have the dependency overrides. You have to have documentation required, it's per college decision, and it's good for 1 year. And you also have to have, so basically this is kind of like emancipation in a way, you have to have legal documentation attached to that. If you are under any of these 3 circumstances, then we can talk after our session. Oops. Okay, so parent information. So again, you are going to need your parent or guardian's legal information, biological, adoptive, or the person who is your parent or legal guardian. If there are court documents, any like legal documentation that is tied to your guardian and that status, then you will have to provide that information. So let's look at the parental marital status. So it's important to select their marital status. So it'll be never married, unmarried, and both legal parents living together. So they've never actually married, but they live together and they've been living together as spouses, married or remarried, divorced or separated, widowed. And then who is the parent? So we have a little scenario on the bottom of our slide, as you can see. So the first scenario is parents are married regardless of opposite sex. What to report on the FAFSA? So you'll answer both questions. You answer questions for both of them. If your parent is remarried, then you'll answer questions about both parent and stepdad or step-parents. If your parents are not married, but they live together, you'll answer questions about both parents. Parents are divorced or separated and not living together. So you answer the question. So this is a special circumstance. If your parents are divorced or separated, then you'll answer questions about the parent that you have lived with for the past 12 months. If it's equal, provide information about the parent who provided more financial support, regardless on who claims the student on the taxes. And then if you have a parent that's never been married or is widowed, this can be the single status, usually known in the tax information or the tax form. Answer question about the parent who you live with. Parent demographic info. So you're going to need their social security number. If your parents do not have a social security number, then you will enter zeros. Again, also for the FSA ID, if your parent does not have a social security number, then you would print out the page and they would sign it and mail it out. There are instructions in the FSA ID. So I know this might be a situation that students might encounter and you might not know how to answer it. So no social, zeros for the FAFSA application, no social for FSA ID. You print out, sign, and mail. Next, they will ask you questions about your parent household size. So this can include you and your parents, other children who receive 50% support or more, other people who live with your parents and receive financial support from them. So let's say that it's you, your two parents and your grandmother, and your grandmother doesn't work, but your parents financially support your grandmother and you as well. So that would count as you would count 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be 4 people living in the household. Let's say you have a sister that lives with you, with your grandmother and your parents, but your sister is financially independent, does not depend on your parents, but lives in the household and pays her bills and everything. That person would not count. If they are not financially dependent on your parent or guardian, then do not count them in your household size, and be sure to include yourself. A lot of people forget to include themselves. Do not include people that are not financially supported by your parents or guardians and do not live in the household. Do not include foster children if you have foster children in your household. And then the bottom, we have number of people in college. How many people in your parents' household will be in college between July 1st and June 30th of 2021. Do not include your parents, so you would include any other sibling that is enrolled this fall semester, throughout next semester, and even in the summer. So if you have a sibling that is on financial aid or FAFSA, then you would include them and enroll them even if they're enrolled for half-time if they're not a full-time student. Full-time status means they're enrolled in 12 or more classes. Half-time status means that they are probably doing about 3 to 6 hours.
Do we include them if they're dependent, or do they have to be under the household?
If they're wait, can you repeat that?
Do we include them if they're independent? Or they have to be under the household, right?
They have to be under the household. Yeah, and I know for your situation, you are considered an independent because that's how your sister applied as well, right? Correct?
Yeah, she did.
Okay. Any questions about parent information before we hop in? I'm trying to monitor the chat.
I have a question. I think like specifically to me, when in the parent information that I fill out, should it be about the person I live with right now or like my actual parents? Because the person I live with doesn't pay for me either. So, so should I include it about my parents or about the person I'm living with?
It would be with the person you're living. I don't think it's with your parents, because they haven't, like, you haven't lived with them for more than 12 months.
Okay. So I would just include like my aunt, for example. Okay.
I'm trying to monitor the chat before we move on. Okay, I just saw a notorious question. Again, it's going to be the 2021-2022 financial aid, not the 2020-2021. All right, we're moving on to, sorry, I have a lot of windows popped up here and they're getting in the way. Financial information. So this one is where it can get a little confusing because y'all just saw the other slide. There's a lot of tax information that we need to collect from the household and from the tax, your parent or guardian. So we have, let me move this, 3 financial scenarios. So you're gonna have to enter tax info manually. You literally follow the line-by-line instruction. Whenever you're filling out this information, make sure that you are sitting with your parent or guardian, that you have the tax forms at hand, because I don't think you're gonna know all the information from memory. But normally in this portion, the financial aid application, if they're asking for a specific question, let's say they're talking about gross income or income in general, they'll tell you what line in the tax form that you have to go look for in that form to have that correct information. So let's say it's about your gross income, and they'll say gross income was about how much. and it'll say like line 10A-B. You'll go to the tax information form, and it'll literally match the same form. So they kind of make it a little easier for you, so you're not lost in the entire process. There is something called the IRS data retriever tool. This transfers tax information directly from IRS into FAFSA, so it automatically does it for you. You find that on the FAFSA application. It'll give you an option to say, do you want to transfer your information to the IRS to the tax form? You can either select yes, or you can manually input it. I personally have never used the IRS DRT tool. I prefer to manually do it, but if that's something you're comfortable with and you can select that, make sure that your parents have completed their taxes, because if not, there's nothing to retrieve. And then all eligible filers should use this tool, so that's something that's easier for you. However, you are ineligible to use it if you filed as married filing separately, so your parents, if you're married and filed as head of household, unmarried and both parents are living together, if your parent or guardian had a recent change in marital status, filed in Puerto Rico or foreign tax reform, if your parents used a ITIN number, which is usually called an ETIN number, if you were a victim of identity theft. Normally people with without social security numbers will use the ITIN number. So if your parents do not have a social security number but reported taxes with an ITIN number, they will not be able to use the DRT tool. So you'll have to fill out that information manually. Also, if your family doesn't file taxes, you can't submit that if you're ineligible, but only if you're eligible, you'll be able to use that tool. So you will need, this is an example of a form. This is what all the tax forms, your 1040, your parent or guardian's 1040 tax form looks like. It'll say 1040, it'll have 2019 from last year. And this is just basic information that's in your parents' forms. I know it can be a little overwhelming, but basically everything in red is what FAFSA will be asking from your parents. That information is highlighted here. Additional income, as you can see, we have like the filing status. It already tells you single, married, filing separately, qualifying widow, all that stuff. Then we move on to the bottom. It'll go ahead and tell you the wages and the salary, which is information that is asked from FAFSA. You'll also be able to include additional income. This includes any like unemployment compensations, any taxable refunds, gains or losses from other types of like incomes. You'll include that as well. In the top right corner, you'll be able to see also again, adjusted gross income, which is information that they'll ask in the FAFSA form too. And they'll refer you, for example, like I had mentioned earlier, they'll say, they'll ask about, let me see something. They're asking about your adjusted gross income. So you'll go to number, and it's pretty tiny, so I'm trying to see it, 7, if you guys can see on your screen, 7, and it'll tell you here, 14 if you need, or 13 if you need the amount as well, any refund information. And then you'll also need the form at the bottom. This is normally what your parents get. It's called a W-2. When your parents submit their taxes, they'll have that information with them. So normally those two documents are together. This one is the portion that can be a little intimidating because it has a lot of numbers. There's a lot of going on. So reporting earned income. So they'll ask information about your parents' income from work. How much does your parent make in 2019. So this is when you'll look at your filing status, and you'll look at the end of 2019, you were, so depending on their age, then a file return if your gross income was at least 12,200. This was just an example. But there's a filing chart. So you'll be able to use this little filing chart, and they'll provide it in the FAFSA website as well to be able to compare. If you can see here, there is also like a little question mark, and because this is a screenshot, I can't click on it, but if you click on the question mark, it'll give you a detailed explanation of where and how to look for that information in your tax form. Submission and follow-up. So once you have completed your basic demographic information, you've completed your parents' personal information and then their financial information, which is based from their tax form, then you'll have to sign and submit. You'll submit parents without a social security number, print the page, mail it out, the same thing as the FSA ID. Again, review your confirmation page. So before you submit it, they'll tell you something called EFC, and that's the estimated family contribution. They're basically calculating how much you'll be able to pay out of college. When you're filling out your financial aid, they'll give you, and this is at the very end of the financial aid application, they'll tell you how much, which schools you want to apply or including your financial aid package. Or for your financial aid application. So let's say you're at the end of your application and you have 5 schools that you're pretty positive about, that you know that you're going to pick from either 5. So let's say it's UT, UTA, TCU, and Texas Tech. So then you would select those 4 schools and include them in that. It'll give you an option to search up the school by name. You select it and it goes into your financial aid application. The reason for that is because even though you haven't been accepted into those schools yet, the minute that you get accepted and you've already listed them, then they'll be able to send that financial aid information to the financial aid office at UTA or UNT or TCU. And then that'll help the financial aid office determine how much is the federal government giving the student and how much can we help the student out to help pay for college. So that's why it's really important to put your at least top 5 schools. If you want to go ahead and list all 10, if you have 10 schools, that's totally fine. And then you'll receive something called the SAR, which is normally takes 3 to 5 days. They are taking a little longer to process. So this is basically a summary of your financial aid report. It provides your personal information, it provides your social security number, all that stuff. And so then it'll also tell you again, how much is your family expected to contribute for your college education. And it'll also list the schools that you are planning on attending in the fall. So you have that for your records. It's really important to keep that. Any questions on the submission? If for whatever reason, I have had students that have questions about or that want to edit their financial aid, you can't always go back and edit it, or you can go back and edit your schools. Normally students forget to add a school or want to take one off, or for whatever reason they forget to add their other options. Make sure that you include all of them, even some community colleges, just in case. It's always better to be over prepared and have more schools than no schools. All right, do we have any questions about creating an FSA ID before we move on to the next one? So I want to answer questions on FSA ID first. No questions on Fsa Id. Alrighty. Any questions about any specific slides that we went over? So I can go back. So questions on like parent demographics, on dependency status. And I can go back. Any questions here on eligibility, demographics? Student education, remember, even if you're in the collegiate academy, select first bachelor's degree, never attended college. Okay. Questions about selective service for any male students? Remember, you have to select, if you haven't registered, then you would select no. Do you want to register? Yes, if you don't, if you want to receive federal aid. If you select no, then you basically are not qualified for federal aid. Any questions about what federal service, selective service means for those students?
That we go to war.
That we go to war. So basically, yes and no. You're not gonna get sent to war, whoever that was, I couldn't see. But it just basically puts you like on some sort of reserve, but that won't happen. Do we have to do it all in one sitting? No, you don't. You don't have to do it all in one sitting, but I do recommend that you get your paperwork ahead of time. So either talk to your parents, your guardians about that information that you need, and then have them sit down with you because you want to have an extra pair of eyes to confirm information. Whenever I did it, I had my mom sit next to me, even though she doesn't speak English. We both went through it and she was reading me the information just so we can confirm it together. You're welcome to save as a draft, but then often you forget where you left off. I personally think it's best to do it all in one sitting because you don't have to go back and remember like, oh, what if that's not correct? Or do it as you would like, but personally, I think it should be done all in one sitting. Block out some time with your parent or guardian to complete that together. It just all depends on how proactive you're going to be about it.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes,
right here, where it says, do you now have or will have any children who will receive more than half? Do that apply to me or to my parent?
Do you have what?
More than half of their support from you between July 1st, 2020 and June 30th, 2022. 2022, whatever.
Is this in the parent section or student section?
It says student information.
Oh, then no. I think this is asking if you have any kids.
Oh.
So it would be no.
Can you define physical custody?
So physical custody is normally defined by legal guardianship, which means that you went to court, there was some sort of court initiation, there was some signed documents, a judge has determined that you are in custody of whatever person. Any other questions? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen really quick so I can.
I have questions, but I'm gonna wait until like the session's end.
Okay. I'm gonna pull up the FAFSA website for those that aren't familiar with it. So it's called.
How do you know if you're registered for the selective service system?
Usually you do that whenever you are registering to vote if you're already like 18 and up. Normally they have an option for males, or whenever you're actually filling out your license, if you're 18 and up, they'll have like an option. Mostly nobody registered for selective service. So for most students, if not all students, it'll be no, I haven't registered. Would you like to register? Yes. Even if you're turning, I think it's even if you're turning 18 later, like not now, but when you're going to be in college, then I would suggest that you click yes, because you're going to be 18 by the time you're receiving some sort of financial aid from the federal government.